fatal heart impact, past painful scars. In fact, I blast tasteful bars and pass. I back up my actions, fact don't ask, grab reactions, jacked attack with every word, then act with class as they hear me snap. I got nothing to lose, cause I fought and felt the bruise. Now I'm not the one confused, call the shots and they produce. I ain't lost, I'm finally loose, pick a new silver excuse. I need the views to boost me to a new abuse of being used. Everybody wants a piece now, y'all can rest in peace now. You're dead to me, so peace out. Remember, you're discreet out. Get ready for defeat now.
This is Sergeant McCain of Station Zulu. To everyone who can hear and currently at least receive this broadcast, be advised. The current threat, or the Saiyan as he called himself, he is currently being engaged by unknown assailants. They do not seem to be on his side, but they do seem to be at least putting up a fight. Now, that is what somebody hears over a radio, as they get out from a very cold spot, and they huddle around the fire from a trash can. The buildings burned around them and destroyed. Many of the people crowding around to hear exactly what is going on. The man on the radio continues stating that currently there is an unknown boy. They do not know why, but for some reason he is able to hold his ground against the Saiyan. The two are currently doing battle. Now, we will cut over to Midoriya. The Saiyan punching him across the face, as Midoriya actually does come up and try and kick him across his. The two going back and forth, over and over again. Before the Saiyan does actually cock his arm backwards and go to get a lucky shot in. Midoriya bring up his hands and blasting him with ki. Immediately being able to hit him, not only in his arm, but able to somewhat damage him. As the area begins to smoke and, well, energy begins to pour off of it, the Saiyan brings up his hand and blasts away at Midoriya. Midoriya getting sent flying along with the blast, smashing to the ground. Before he does stand back up, still a bit angry, as he actually does begin to vocalize his anger. Kaioken times 2! Hisashi getting a bit concerned. Midoriya's power jumping up to almost 70,000. So now he does at least outmatch this man. Midoriya immediately disappearing before reappearing directly in front of the man, throwing out his hand as the guy catches it, and is able to actually swing Midoriya past him before bringing his knee up and kicking him directly in his stomach. Midoriya having the wind knocked out of him before the man tries to blast him across the face. Midoriya being able to actually send him flying with a blast this time. Whenever he was kicked, he brought up his left hand and turned it. As soon as he blasts the man away, the man gets sent flying. And you do hear everyone who is currently listening to this battle begin to cheer. Now, we do have Midoriya, who, after sucking in some breath, immediately turns to look at the man, who begins to power up, bringing his hands upwards before putting them behind him. Him powering up, ki blast in his hands, before immediately sending them flying. As soon as he does that, Midoriya is confused, bringing his hands up and going to blast away at them. As soon as he sends a blast outwards, and thinks that he hit one, or made contact with it, the blast simply just moves. It's spinning across Midoriya's and sending his ricocheting into a different direction. Midoriya stunned, as this blast actually does hit him across his body. The other blast, almost doing the same thing. However, Midoriya, he was actually able to kick it upwards towards the sky. Now, Midoriya does actually get back up, and he is panting and kind of tired. Now, you do have Inko, who is actually kind of concerned. Vados. Yes, Inko? Are you gonna do something? No. Besides, you would be the one to step in before I would. I said I was only going to make sure that he does not kill Midoriya. But you have to do something. No, I do not. This is his fight. Besides, have you been paying attention or looking closely? Inko looking a bit closer, and seeing Midoriya, whenever he does actually look up, he immediately begins to disappear. As soon as he does, he reappears behind the man and tries to kick him directly across the side, successfully getting the kick in, as the man does actually grab Midoriya's leg and begin to try and pull it upwards, to break it. Inko confused. What is she talking about? Izuku is holding back, so I believe that if you give him some encouraging words, it might help him. That, or you can go out there and join him. Vados. You're not going to do anything? No. Not at the current moment. He can still win. That's right. Inko deciding to actually give her son words of encouragement, yelling out that Izuku, he can win and beat this man. This man is nothing more than a villain and a murderer. And if he does believe that he can win, go for it. Don't hold back anymore. Now, as soon as Midoriya does hear that, he actually does begin to somewhat slip into his Ultra Instinct. He's been so focused on making sure that his mind is full of emotion and thoughts. However, as soon as this aura does appear around Midoriya and his heat does begin to emanate, the man does feel Midoriya's rapid jump in power. Midoriya going from, let's say, around 22,000 to jumping up to 250,000. The man shocked and surprised, going to throw his hand outwards and attack Midoriya. As soon as he does swing his arm behind him at Midoriya, Midoriya immediately dodged, being able to let his body weight fall back towards the ground, slip his leg outwards, as he immediately was able to get back onto his feet. As soon as the man did see Midoriya, he was kind of confused. Midoriya getting into a stance before rushing forwards, and immediately overpowering the man. People watching, along with the Saiyans, confused, feeling this rapid jump in power. What the hell? That energy. What is that? I don't know, but is that... No, that can't be the man. Can it? I don't know. Now, with that being said, we do have somewhere else. We do have on the lookout. Somebody is currently watching the battle. They are quite stunned, seeing as it has just turned into someone else's favor, as they do at least have a bit more faith that humanity will survive. Now, with that being said, back over to Midoriya. As soon as he's dodging and weaving through all these man's punches, he actually does go on the offense, bringing his hand up and blasting the man directly into his stomach. The man being sent flying away before he does smash into the ground. And you do have Midoriya, who brings his hands up. He puts his feet together and brings his hands out in front of him, creating a ki blast. As soon as he does create it, he brings it upwards, throwing it up into the air, before making another one, and another one, all of them beginning to surround around Midoriya, before he simply does state, well, I don't know a very good attack name for it. I've thought about, I was gonna say Little Bomber, because not only is that a JoJo reference, but it's actually kind of a good name. but I think that's the name of like Nappa's attack that turned a city into a glass floor. And I don't want to confuse everybody. Let's say he just calls this Bomber. As Midoriya says the name of this, he does one thing. He brings himself up into the air and smashes at the Ki Blast. As soon as he does, they begin to propel themselves forwards at the Saiyan. The Saiyan shocked as one hits him. Midoriya throwing the other ones and beginning to simply just kick them. Now, as Midoriya did kick one, the Saiyan, he immediately was able to jump out and fly towards the sky. Thinking that he dodged it. As the Ki Blast, it begins by swinging itself upwards and following the Saiyan. Him kind of confused. As Midoriya does actually somewhat smirk more, and he sends out another one of these Ki Blast, hitting it a certain way as it begins to follow the Saiyan. Now, the Saiyan, at this point, he's grasping at straws. And Midoriya, he decides that he needs to end this now, as he does bring his hands up, and he turns his wrist, before closing it into a fist. Both the Ki Blast exploding in the air and actually doing some damage to the Saiyan. Before he does just look pissed off, looking back down at the planet towards this young boy, with silver eyes. You're pissing me off. You know what? I don't care anymore. I can damage your core and then just leave this damn place. If they're coming after me anyway, they'd eventually check this planet. Him beginning to make a Ki Blast in his hands. And it gets bigger. Bigger and bigger. Midoriya watching this man create a ginormous ball. Now, as soon as he actually does bring his hands outwards, you do see that it begins to flatten out into his palm. Midoriya confused and watching, understanding what the man's about to do. Vados moved his wrist away from the planet, but he's pointing directly at it. No. Damn it. Now, Midoriya, he's actually very concerned, dropping out of Ultra Instinct with how much is racing back through his head. Now, Midoriya, he does one single thing. He begins to power up. Kaioken times 2! Midoriya jumping to 70,000. And Inko just watching, looking at Vados as Vados shakes her head no. And Midoriya cocks his hands backwards, just like the same Saiyan, before charging up a powerful Ki Blast. And he releases it. Now, as soon as Midoriya does do that, he blasts with as much power as he can. And he blasts with a flat palm. Now, I'm not really too sure of a good name for this attack, but the other attack I could call the Targeting Bomber, so as to not confuse it with Little Bomber, because I know that's probably a thing that people might get confused about later on. Now, with that being said, let's continue. The Saiyan blasts outwards with as much power as he can. Now, as soon as that does happen, Midoriya, he just keeps blasting. Many different people all around the world, and the government being able to see what's currently going on. People hearing that a beam struggle or a system of lights are fighting back and forth against each other, both emanating from these two. Now, the Saiyan, he begins to get overtaken by a strange glow, and he does begin to feel a little bit stronger. Now, as soon as he does feel like that, he cocks his hand back outwards and blasts out more. Midoriya's beam getting weaker and smaller. Now, Midoriya is shocked, and he's just trying to hold on, jumping up to Kaioken times 3. He's only done this once or twice during training, and it was not fun. King Kai, he told him not to weight train after that. Otherwise, he damaged himself more. Midoriya's beam trying to fight back more, before Inko is given a go-ahead. Vados actually looking a bit confused at why the Saiyan's power just jumped up. As soon as Inko does actually appear by Midoriya, she cocks her hands backwards too. However, she goes more into a baseball-like stance, before blasting her own power upwards and shouting Kaioken. Now, over with Hisashi. He was currently focusing on what was going on with their friends, or family. Now, he was able to find Inko's grandfather, or Inko's father, my bad. I meant Izuku's grandfather. Now, he was kind of confused and asked exactly where his dad was, or his parents. And they couldn't really give a good answer. Hisashi assuming the worst. However, he did have to leave, him immediately powering up to Kaioken times 1 before trying to fly away. Now, with that being said, this grandfather, he did actually want to try and give him a warning. Now, Hisashi left far too fast before he could hear it. Now, back over with the evil Saiyan. The evil Saiyan, his beam gets blown away, and he gets covered by the blast. Now, as soon as that does happen, we do have the Saiyan get sent flying away before he does smash somewhere into the ground. And Midoriya, he actually does drop out of Kaioken, before falling forwards and onto his knees, breathing a bit heavily. And Inko, she actually does drop by Midoriya and inspect to see if he's alright. Izuku, are you okay? Yeah, Mom. I'll be fine. I just didn't expect 3 to be that painful. Okay, good. Remember what King Kai said. Don't go above 3. Yes, Mom. But did we get him? Now, Vados does actually begin to inform Inko. Be careful right now. The opponent does not seem to be completely down. What? But that makes no sense. Even Midoriya was stronger than him whenever he did that. He should be down. Now, with that being said, we do have the Saiyans. The rest of the elites have arrived, and they saw the beam fly out into space. After hearing a radio broadcast, or broadcast from their fellow Saiyan elites, talking about this strange power, or the gap in power that this opponent has to the insane Saiyan, it was quite shocking. Now, with that being said, the evil Saiyan, he does get back up, before a particular mark does begin to form on his head, and Midoriya does watch as his ki begins to go crazy. The Saiyan bringing his hands up towards his face, and beginning to scream. Now, Inko begins to hear this and feel his power level. The man's power is rising rapidly, and it's bad. Now, with that being said, Midoriya does begin to stand on his feet, along with Inko actually powering back up to Kaioken, before rushing this man. Now, as soon as she does get up to times 3, she rushes forwards towards him and tries to go out and hit him. Him catching her fist before cracking her knuckles backwards. Inko screaming out in pain as the man broke them, before she does bring up her hand, or her other hand and try and punch him directly in the face. That does not work. Her swiftly opening up her palm and blasting away at him with a large amount of ki blast as she begins to try and back away. Now, Hisashi, he begins to move faster, powering up to times 3 and moving fast. Now, along with that, we do have Midoriya, who actually does get back onto his feet and power up more, rushing in to try and help his mother. Now, They are trying to take down or hold off the evil Saiyan before Hisashi does arrive. Now, the long and short of it is the evil Saiyan, for about a couple of minutes, he overpowers these three. And his power level, I want to say, has jumped up to around 1 million, or at least 900,000. Now, with that being said, we also do have the Supreme Kai of Time. She notices these abnormalities in time, since a scroll popped up out of nowhere whenever she was going back over her records, and she did find a particular instance. Now, with that being said, Midoriya, whenever he did get back up, he tried to rush forwards, being beaten down over and over and over again back into the dirt. And the evil Saiyan, he just laughing more and more. Before Hisashi, he does power up to times 10. His power level jumping to 300,000, or 375,000. And Hisashi, he tries to power up more, going to times 20. King Kai screaming at him not to do this. If he still powers down now, there is still a chance that he will not destroy his body. Now, Hisashi does rush in and go to attack. Meanwhile, we do have Izuku, who is laying down and trying to nurse his injuries. This guy's way too strong. Come on. You have to get back up. For everyone. Come on, Izuku. You know what you have to do. Midoriya says, his body being completely covered in a white aura. Before Vados, she actually does turn to look at him. Midoriya getting back up on his feet before he does at least begin to move. His body, most of it does seem to be limp. So, the boy passed out. Now, as soon as Midoriya does begin to go on the offensive, we do have his increased Ultra Instinct. Instead of his 10% multiplier, it's around 20. Midoriya's power level jumping to 400,000. And he goes to battle his opponents. Hisashi and Midoriya. Both these two fighting the opponents. This man, he is going back and forth against them constantly. Izuku, his hits, the man cannot see, being pummeled by them. However, Hisashi, he's able to simply just throw out his hand and blast him in the gut with a ki blast, before sending him flying backwards. And Hisashi, he just gets back up. Before, you do have the muscles in his right arm explode. Hisashi falling to the ground and screaming out in pain about that. Midoriya, as soon as he does hear a scream, he closes his eyes for a second and opens them back up, screaming directly in this man's face as the man gets sent pummeling backwards, his body hit by an unknown force. Now, with that, Midoriya then just begins to try powering up, and his power level just starts to rise. Now, with that being said, Midoriya, he begins to slip into Mastered Ultra Instincts, his hair beginning to spark with and emanate with the white color. Now, Midoriya's body is trying to not do this, but Midoriya, his willpower is keeping him going. Midoriya rushing in before bringing his hand backwards and smashing down into the Saiyan. Now, the Saiyan, Midoriya and him, just keep fighting. Midoriya not even daring to try and dodge. Midoriya just punching him over and over again in his face and in his neck. Now, Midoriya, as he's doing this, the man does one thing. Before the power that's covering his body does begin to actually start fading, he brings his hand up and does blast Midoriya with a large amount of light, covering both of his eyes. Midoriya's body moving backwards and bringing it up to defend, well, his eyes. Now, as soon as that does happen, the Saiyan does get back up and immediately rush forwards, kicking Midoriya with full power, and breaking a lot of his ribs. Midoriya being sent flying away, as his body goes tumbling and rolling before finally hitting the ground. And Midoriya, he is exhausted. Now, with that being said, you also do have Hisashi, who watches the Saiyan begin to try and walk over to Midoriya. Him bring his hand up, and the power beginning to flicker and fade from his body, as the Saiyan struggles to keep himself on his own feet. And Hisashi, he doesn't really have a choice. Shit. Kaioken times 10, he says, immediately blasting out from where he was laying and towards the Saiyan. Him being able to meet the Saiyan's eyes and gaze as the Saiyan turns to meet him. Hisashi and the Saiyan headbutting. Now, as soon as Hisashi did do that, not only did the Saiyan break something in his head and his neck, Hisashi, he was knocked out. Now, Hisashi, as soon as he was knocked out, he immediately powered down, his body falling and rolling at high speeds, before finally at least crashing down into the ground. And you do have Inko. She is at least somewhat still conscious, her trying to move and struggling to do so, before at least trying to call out Hisashi's name. Now, she also does call out Izuku, but he's unconscious. Now, Vados does actually walk up and instruct Inko of what is currently going to need to happen. They need to take down the Saiyan threats. And stop right there. Her turning around and seeing a large group of Saiyans. My, and who might you be? We are the elite forces of planet Sadala, and we have come to take that man down. Well, this is strange. Oh, why, my. It's quite alright. However, I didn't understand that Saiyans could be so strong. I'm sorry? He shouldn't have been that much trouble for you, right? We felt the influxes in power. Well, yes and no. For me, he would have been a cakewalk. In fact, just a little bit more than a spider on my shoe. However, for my students right here, he actually posed quite a lot of a challenge. In fact, I wasn't aware that you can challenge someone with Ultra Instinct with whatever power he used, and still come out on top. What are you talking about? Well, you have something similar to the Kaioken, do you not? The Kaio what? A technique to increase your power level. No, we don't. Now, the Saiyans begin to rush over and inspect this man, finding that his heart rate, it is at least somewhat there. And his face and neck are at least broken, so he might not be moving for a while. Now, as soon as Vados does come over, she heals Inko's injuries, before she's able to get up and begin to move a lot better. Thanks, Vados. No, you are quite alright. Her doing the same to Midoriya, before they do go over to Hisashi. Now, Hisashi, he actually is at least a bit more unconscious, or you could say unstable. Vados bends down to try and heal him. However, Hisashi, whenever his body is healed, he does not wake up. Now, Inko begins to fear for the worst, until Hisashi begins to loudly snore. Her getting a bit annoyed, but almost letting out a bit of a laugh. Before Vados, who is at least carrying Midoriya over her shoulder, does turn around to hear what the Saiyans are talking about. I'm sorry, are you saying something? Yes, the Saiyans of planet Sadala and our, well, king, they do thank you. But I'm just completely surprised. The reports we've looked at from the two men on the planet, our men, they're inconsistent. Your species is, well, humans' regular power level is a 5. However, each one of these three, they're over 10,000. That young boy there, he wouldn't happen to be a Saiyan, would he? No, why do you ask? Well, it's just no reason. But the man saying before he does actually drop down onto his knee and asking if they would accept meeting their king. He would like to thank them for everything they have done, along with bringing in this wanted criminal. He gives Saiyans a bad name. Her looking at Inko. Sure, but do you think that you could do our species a favor? I believe that you would have to discuss that with my king, but pray tell, what would you have in mind? Well, it's just our planet's kind of in ruins at the moment. Would you be able to help assist in rebuilding efforts? Well, that's a complicated matter. But I can't say yes to that request. That would be the king's doing. Or at least his words, not mine. Please understand. Okay. Now, the Saiyans, after restraining and basically making sure this man cannot get away this time, they cram him into a space pod and set it for planet Sadala. After they put him in the pod, they rip out anything that he would need to put the pod off course. Basically meaning that he's stuck in there. Now, the Saiyans also do begin to follow in front and behind him. That way he can't even escape if he wanted to. They can just follow him right away. Now, with that being said, Earth does actually begin to heal. And the Earth Defense Force, they actually do begin to further their projects and research off of the data they have collected. A lot more interested in what they have just witnessed. Now, with that being said, I do believe that that would be a good point to leave this off of. And I do hope you guys enjoyed. And have an amazing night. I'll catch you guys in the next part.